It's so possible now to build all these ideas pre-AI. There was so much work that you did not communicate all of the depth of it to a client. To sit in front of a computer screen day in and day out, building these digital tools, that's not a valuable use of human life, really. And to have AI kind of step in and then take some of that stuff out, I think it's great for people. And to be honest, it just pissed me off.
Welcome to Beyond the Brief. On today's episode, I'm talking to Travis Weerts, a man of many titles, be a designer, developer, artist, or even maker. Travis has built many things over his career, from AI radio stations to room visualizers, voice agents for airports, Australian Open activations, and even a running app that started as fitness motivation for Travis, but ended as a protest against Spotify's investment choices. He's made some incredible things, which is why I wanted him on the show. Because for years, a lot of creative work has died in pitch decks. You had the idea, but had to sell the vision to make it real. Travis argues that those days are over, and that he's seeing a build-first mentality where it's much better as a sales tool than just the idea itself. In this episode, we talk about the future of agency work, how his role is changing due to AI, and what happens when the people with taste can finally build the thing before a committee has time to kill it. So let's get into it. Travis, how are you?
Good, man. How you going?
Good. Welcome to the show, episode 3. It's good to have you on.
Good to be here, man.
I said this before to you. I feel like we should have crossed paths earlier. You seem like someone who's doing very cool things creatively with a lot of different technology. I guess the title that I'd probably give you from what I'm looking at from afar is creative technologist. I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems the kind of thing that you do.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. It sounds about right.
That's good. So I guess for viewers, why don't we start with a little bit of a backstory, where you've come from, what kind of work you've done over your career. We can kind of hone in on some of the brilliant things that you've created, of which there are many, after doing some research. And yeah, we'll just see where this conversation goes.
Yeah, cool. I guess first of all, yeah, likewise. I don't want to rehash it, but I feel like, yeah, we should have crossed paths sooner. It feels like, yeah, you're a brother from another mother or something, working in the same space, same kind of, definitely thinking the same, similar ways. So it's good to finally, meet and have a conversation and catch up.
Well, hello.
Yeah, hi. I won't belabor it too much, going too much of my background, but creative technologist was my latest sort of job title. I never really thought of myself in those terms or with that title necessarily, but once it was sort of bestowed upon me by my elders, I was like, you know what? I think that's it. I've just always been into the tech space, design space, creative space, and I sort of had a little bit of both, left brain thinking and right brain, and kind of both, and trying to find, I guess, the juxtaposition of those things. From I sound like I'm going way back now, but even at like my earliest memory is like. In this space is like spending my nights in Barnes and Noble in the programming section, like reading the O'Reilly books and stuff, like trying to figure out how to build apps that I was deploying in like AOL. That's how much I'm going to date myself here.
Pre-Stack Overflow,
Yeah. Barnes and Noble was Stack Overflow, man. Yeah. But yeah, I've just always had like a fascination for it, and then decided to study computer science, even though I absolutely wanted to go to art school. But my parents, looking back, rightfully so, like said, maybe let's not do the starving artist thing, even though I'm still somehow feel like I'm doing that. Yeah, and then I freelanced for almost my entire life and got some amazing opportunities to do stuff. Just super lucky. Just, I don't know, being passionate about what you're doing and just saying yes to projects just leads to more work. And there's nothing, complicated about it. And I did that for a really long time. That's a short story. Went from small mom and pop projects or indie bands all the way to some incredible opportunities to work for brands I never even dreamed that me as a little freelancer would ever get to work on.
So you when did you arrive in Western Australia? How long have you been here for?
About 10 years, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Little aside, but how do you find it to the rest of the world in terms of creative opportunities and creative projects and creative thinking?
I feel like I've gotten to do even more incredible projects since I've I've been in Australia. Like just
Yeah.
the opportunities that I've been given is just amazing. Really, I find it great. Really.
Yeah, great.
I feel like WA kind of always gets this rap compared to like Sydney and the eastern states and stuff, but I don't know. That's not been my experience at all. Thriving creative.
Likewise. Yeah, I think there's a lot. And you've had quite a career, I think. So as you're saying, you kind of started out freelancing and you've worked at different agencies around town.
Yeah.
I think you were at Dilate for a bit and then VML, if I'm right, and you worked at the start for a bit. I don't know, you might still be there. I don't know.
I'm now freelance. I've decided, I've been working towards getting back, I guess, to my roots a bit. And
is that just because it's about sort of creative freedom, finding the right project and something that sort of feels right for you and where you can just dive in 100% or a bit more free? Like what is the desire there?
Yeah, absolutely. That you just nailed it. At VML, I was there for maybe 5-6 years, and it's changed names a couple of times, but it's not important. It's a little bit more. I'm not sure what you know about VML or not, but it's a global agency kind of thing. And I'd never been in that world or knew much about it. And coming into it, I definitely felt like a fish out of water a little bit. I've got my digital background, and then going into sort of more classic. I hate to use the word classic because that makes it sound old, but traditional advertising style. Yeah, where everything is campaign based and you're constantly pitching ideas. It was fascinating. It felt like you were living in an episode of Mad Men, even still today.
Rapid creativity, right? It's like, come up with a great idea, go. It's not that easy. It's really hard.
Except that last bit, like the go bit, never really happened. It was more like, here's an idea. Okay, now let's go on to the next idea and the next idea and the next idea. And
right.
I like, as a person that likes to build and design and see ideas through, like that was just really frustrating, I think.
Yeah.
Like
you're just kind of throwing these things out and not being able to see the tail end of it.
Exactly. And then it goes to some other team that, gets
Which
to
is
do
fine.
the thing.
It's how those sorts of businesses are set up to serve those types of engagements. But I guess as a freelancer now, you can have the idea, you can craft the idea, you can deliver it.
Totally.
See the performance and
and there's a joy that comes from making a thing and putting that thing out into the world, and I just missed that. And so, especially in this new world that's been emerging, I was like, it's so possible now to build all these ideas with little effort or less effort, I should say. It's not that like it's little effort.
I'd classify it as a different kind of effort.
Yeah.
It's still a lot of work, but it's deployed differently and it's amplified. So you can get more done.
Totally.
So, that's really cool. So, you're a builder, it seems. And I think product is something that probably comes pretty naturally to you then. So the idea of seeing things through and, starting with an idea, shipping something and seeing it grow and improve is probably pretty alluring.
Yeah.
You seem to have done a lot of that. So, I want to touch on that soon and start talking about some of your brilliant products. But what I really want to touch on was something you just raised around the changing of the creative process, where you're playing with these new tools. You've gone freelance because you're sensing a sense of possibility. When did you first start playing this technology, sort of LLMs, to boost your own sort of workflow? And what was that journey like to where you are now?
I can't remember the very first time. I can kind of remember maybe around the Mid-Journey the first version of Mid-Journey, seeing it.
Yep.
And I think right at that same time, I was also kind of seeing this emergence of more public-facing AI products. I think there was one from IBM that could read the sentiment analysis in a body of text, and then I was like, we can do really cool stuff with that. And then seeing the image generation, I just started playing with it at that point, like little weird ideas that went nowhere, and just experimenting, mostly just in this spirit of play, really. Like for example, the IBM one, I started wondering if you could, build a body of text from a bunch of people and display the emotional side of that text in form of an interactive painting. Yeah.
Where'd that get to? That sounds cool.
There was a project that came in at VML for Murdoch, and they wanted to display some of that thinking. It didn't end up looking like the visualization that I played with and built, but that idea went on to, they've got a new technology, I can't remember the name of it, a technology center that they've opened, new building, and they're putting in some displays. And that idea ended up being on one of those displays around crowdsourcing emotional analysis art. I can't remember what the name of it was that they put on it, but yeah. But it started with
saw the light of day.
Yeah, hey, cool, let's try this thing. And then, there's this idea that might work for, let's pitch that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Kind of seeing a twinkle of capability and then saying, okay, well, how can I use this and how can I be creative with it? Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So what followed after? I remember the early days of Midjourney, and it kind of blew me away. Like I saw the really early research papers from Google, I think it was Google DeepMind, where they had like, here's a cat. And it was just like a pixelated graphic of this is what a machine thinks a cat looks like. And I remember that absolutely blowing my mind. It
actually looks like a cat.
Yeah, it's kind of this fuzzy pixelated cat, right? And like, this is incredible technology. Imagine what we could do with this. And then Midjourney comes out and everything, even that was really exciting. You can do a lot with this, but the quality, you get this really creepy looking,
totally, dude.
Glitched out.
Where did they get that art from that they trained it on?
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole separate issue we can talk about, but just seeing the progression of Midjourney was amazing. I, just as an aside, I was playing with it at a company I'm sort of a shareholder in, which is Menuzan. And we were using it to generate food photography for our menu designs.
Yeah, nice.
Because it was much, obviously, startup, you're bootstrapping. It's much more cost effective to generate photos. And the quality just blew my mind. This is it now.
Yeah.
What are we going to be able to do with it?
What version of Midjourney was that when you were?
I'm going to say 3 or 4.
Yeah, okay.
Got it up to now 8 now, I think.
I've lost count, to be honest.
I think it was 2022, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And that, a lot of fun. So, what else? How have you progressed from creating artworks to building the things you've built today? What else followed?
I guess it was just kind of more of that. And when I look back over, I don't know, the last few years, it's just continuing that spirit of play, learning a little bit more. And then once I kind of developed enough trust, or maybe more trust in myself than I knew what the hell I was even doing, you start to, I don't know, evolve and grow. And it's like you evolve from just chatting to an LLM one-on-one to then realizing, I could assign this thing to a task and or an agent. And I guess you just get a little bit more systematic in your thinking, or how do I not just have singular conversation, but how do I kind of put these things to work in areas that are within an application? How do you support where I feel like it's really, really great is sort of those behind the scenes tasks that are just laborious and boring. And it's a bit of a churn, like going through and, I don't know, analyzing records and making sure that, you remove all the false positives and just stuff that happens in any application. I guess I moved from playing, experimenting, having fun, and slowly it's starting to creep its way into my real jobs, my real work. Yeah.
Slowly taking over.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. How do we get,
And so you mentioned before you're in Barnes and Noble and you're reading programming books. So have you always been engineer minded or development minded with a flair for creativity, or where on that kind of left and right do you sit, do you think?
I don't know, but my answer would be if I had a screen recording of what's on my screen, probably over 70%, I'm staring at consoles and terminals and rainbow colored code. and I'm like, how did I get here? This is not like the trajectory that I was supposed to be on. I get excited by the design and the product that, is possible, and the experience that's unlocked on the other side.
And you feel unlocked, right? Like, do you feel it's not that you don't want to work with other people, because a lot happens through collaboration, right? It's brilliant, but do you feel like you have these ideas, you can now realize them?
Yeah, totally.
And you can get them somewhere before you show other people, right? Totally. And it's just an idea. Yeah. And the interface to doing that right now is just text on a screen. That's where you spend most of your time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of, the ideas that I have kind of live in that prototype space. And it's just massaging an idea until it's at a point where it's shareable, or I even know how to communicate what the idea is. It's polished enough that maybe it kind of makes sense.
So were you building prototypes beforehand without this technology? So you're comfortable enough in dev tools to, spin something up and deploy it, all that kind of stuff?
Yes, but it's changed. Like I think in the old paradigm, pre AI, you sort of had to get a client's buy-in on the idea before you could even move into building the prototype stage. Like it cost too much to even do that.
100%.
And
the idea is the thing that you sell first, and then if that works, then you get budget to actually realize it.
Yeah. And the amount of times that those ideas died before they were even given, the first bit of life support. Was just crazy how many times an idea is shut down. And I get it. It's expensive. But then there was right around that period where I was experimenting with, coding with AI for the first time, outside of just like the, Copilot, where it kind of fixes your syntax and stuff.
Yeah.
But really using it as a build tool, it occurred to me, like, I can just, and this is during VML when I was sitting there in my job, was just to put slide decks together. And I'll never forget. And I was like, wait a second, I can just stick a link on this slide deck now that they can click on, and it can go run the thing that I'm trying to say you should do.
Yep.
And there was a noticeable step change in like how many of the ideas that I submitted that had a link on it, or you could go and do use the thing. How many of those ideas got through the door versus the ones that did not? And then I was like, this is valuable.
That's powerful. People need to see things. It's hard for the general to visualize an idea, but if you create something and share, then they're much more likely to get buy-in, right?
Totally.
That's really cool. So you started out just introducing things, and it started to take over because it converted better.
Totally, man.
It's like a sales strategy.
It was. I felt like I had a sort of magic trick or something, like, because like the folks at VML, hats off to them. I always felt like I had the most, like, what's the word? Yeah, imposter syndrome. Because I was just like this digital designer developer, but then in this sort of creative space, and all of their ideas were just next level. Everyone that's coming out of that agency.
Yeah.
And I was like, I learned that I could lean back on some of that development background and put some links in there and maybe get a couple ideas through, where I always felt like I was putting ideas up against these folks who were
juggernauts,
just brilliant at like putting the best pitch deck together possible, which wasn't necessarily my sweet spot.
Creativity's hard. It's so hard. I got a lot of respect for people that can do that well. I'm probably similar to you in that I think where my strength is I can be creative, but not at that level, but I can realize things. So if I get a slither of something that I'm like, I can build that. I know how to make that a thing. And then from there you iterate. And so it's funny, the point you raise around it's the cost collapsing, right? So this is a transition that I don't know how all agencies are going to navigate this, but you're right. It's much more cost effective to just make something now and share it with them. But if you don't have budget to do that, how do you do that? So they have to look at their cost structure. How do you is it you have a continuous retainer to just generate ideas? So it's like the business of agency has to change around this technology, because
absolutely,
by the time you can have an idea, and by the end of the day, you've got a really strong prototype, and you can share that with the client the next day and say, hey, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
And if you're going to do the other way around, where you're going to create, a pitch deck for a week, the cost of that is more than actually producing
I agree.
a thing.
Totally.
And I'm using this technology now to skip the deck altogether. I just make websites. So my proposals, contracts, everything is just a full website, because it's what the technology is good at, and it's much easier to do. So
I mean, like the actual proposal itself and stuff is what? Wow.
Yeah. Complete website, because it's just a lot. It's a lot easier for agents to understand, web structure and, components and, all that kind of stuff, rather than I got to design a slide deck in, Google Slides or whatever.
I'm always, what program should I use for this?
And using something like using browser use in any of these tools is awful. So the time is just crazy. So it's an interesting time, I think, especially for larger businesses, where I think you've made the right decision, where you can just be really nimble and say, I'm just going to do it like this, and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's great. So what happens next? You've played around with a while. You have VML. You're creating more things in your proposals. What led to the next transition?
There was a specific idea that I was really passionate about, and it got through the gauntlet of creative director decisions and stuff, and I just became absorbed with the idea, really, and wanting to build out the product. And I think through that process, like something kind of shifted, where I was like you just said, I'm just going to go and do this my way and start building out. Because I'd done freelance before, and I was like, I could probably do this again. And I guess little by little, I just started saying yes to, referrals and little projects here and there, and to, I guess, build out a kind of a support network. And then kind of moved from full time to half time to a quarter time until I could make that move. And yeah, all along, still just kind of experimenting with ideas, trying to figure out what my workflow might look like, how I can, I guess, cost effectively produce actual shippable products, and also just having fun and trying new tools. And, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here.
Carve out a whole day just to play with new tools. Yeah.
Man, tell me about it. That feels like it's a job in and of itself these days.
Yeah, I do find it sometimes hard to keep up, but I think if you niche down, right, like there's so much. I'm not gonna pay attention to it all because I can't. But like if I want to focus on this. There's enough going on, bubbling away in that one little space that you can kind of keep track of it.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I feel like that's you to a T. Like I feel like you are keeping on top of it all. When I follow like the stuff you share and stuff on LinkedIn, I'm like, that's a gem. I'm going to take that. I've downloaded Pencil today.
Yeah, Pencil's lovely. Yeah, I that's what I want to do as well, is share this stuff. Like I don't want to hold on to anything. This stuff is moving so fast. So I wrote an article the other day about my own harness. I built a harness for agents to build software, and I just basically put everything in there that I created within a blog post, and you can point your agent at it, and it will more or less build it for you. And I thought, well, why not, right? Because things are moving so fast. We've already moved on to loops, so now I've built agentic loops into it. So you just keep going and just share. Man. I just think it's the right way to go. So
even I read I had a bit of a poke around your website last night, and by the way, amazing website. Yeah, well, where did you find the time to go and build that in and amongst all the things? But
that was rapid, quick. So.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look like it.
Thank you.
But that article, like even that is such a nugget, man, of gold. Getting to that idea that like you could build out agents that could harness other agents and I guess work together and work through a process. Yeah, that feels like super forward thinking, and it makes so much sense after reading. I was like, oh, the way you're thinking about approaching using your agent is like running a team.
Yeah, they are. They're just like people, and it's like if you gave a person a job, right? If you hired someone, you probably want to give them a job description. And we used to do that with prompts. You are this, and this is how you think. Right? So you give them the job description, and then you want to make sure that they're doing their job. So you go check in on them and say, "How's it going? Are you off the rails a little bit there? We want to focus on this." So you're guiding them through. And you're giving them the tools that they want to use for their job. So they get access to web browsers and whatever. And so it's basically just the same lessons we've learned over our own businesses applied to these things. And I was finding that I kept getting this feedback from people when they're using them. It was like, oh, they're not very reliable, or they go off and they do this, and it's like, well, yes, because you haven't given them context and you haven't given them a set of rules.
You're the boss,
right? You've got to. Yeah, like exactly.
It's
your
them
fault. It's bad leadership. If you give them all the context for things, and then you create a set system for a workflow that you want, you can even enforce it so that they can't. They physically have to stop and go, hey, what do you think? For you to ingest as a human, learn it. Happy with that? Not great. Before we move on, right? So it's not a new theory, but it seems to work really well. So yeah, I'm just trying to imply that stuff and share as much as I can. So I'm interested to learn about you though. So you have a lot of ideas. You've created a lot of products. I see things that you've posted online, and I'm super impressed by them. I love OzFM.
Thanks, man.
It's so cool. And I want to talk about, is it musical drones?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's Zingo.
Yeah.
Looks really cool. So you've got some really cool ideas, right? There's like 4 products there of varying levels of, they're different industries, they're different ideas. Are these all you? Are you partnering with people? When did you, there's quite a portfolio of products there.
Yeah. Looksee is, that one specifically is myself and one of my colleagues from VML. But everything else, with the exception of there's one that's called Ayuki, that's also another different colleague from also from VML. But yeah, the other things are just little hobby experiments, and it gives me space to play and evolve and learn, and yeah.
So you just come up with these ideas, and what would it take you to go from an idea to sort of a rough cut of a product that you put out there?
So musical drones, that one, I'll start there.
Well, quickly for viewers, what is it? What does it do? Because it's quite a cool concept. It's hilarious. So just explain it a little bit.
Yeah. I'll go back to the very start. I was, so I'm 44. I was trying to motivate myself to run more, exercise. I'm getting to that point where there's a noticeable difference of when I am working out versus not. Anyway, I decided to create a running app just to track myself, just to see if I could get AI to even make my own running app. And I did, and it was super simple. And I would always listen to Spotify while I was running. And my partner, she actually came up with this idea, and she was like, well, what if you could make it so that if you stopped running, the app noticed the lack of movement or your speed slowing down, and the music stopped. And I was like, that's it. That's genius. Like that is as simple as that. A running app where you hit go, you start running. If you stop, the music stops. And when you start again, the music keeps going. And I just thought that idea was amazing. So I tried to see if I could get AI. I keep pointing over here, like my AI lives over here on my laptop.
There's Jeff. Jeff's beavering away.
Yeah. And so I kept prompting to see how far I could, if I could get a workable prototype of that running, and it worked it out. It worked. And then I guess right around that time, but I didn't do anything with it. I just kind of left it on the shelf, so to speak. And maybe a couple months went by, and I read this news article about Spotify and what the owner of Spotify was now spending all of our subscription money on. And to be honest, it just pissed me off. Like I don't usually get passionate about stuff. Like I'm pretty placid, pretty peaceful, whatever. Yeah. But just the thought of like this dude spending almost $1 billion on AI powered, sorry, for those that don't know, Mr. Spotify is now spending, or has spent, I say our money, I don't know that for sure, but where did he get his $1 billion from on investing into AI-powered military drones? And so the idea just pissed me off. And I was like, oh, I've got this running app, and I know it's connected to Spotify because you got to hit the button to connect your Spotify account. And I was like, screw this. And then something about that news story and drones and a running app that was connected to Spotify, something clicked. Yeah. And I was like, I wonder how hard it is to run away from, like, if you were out on, I don't know, the battlefield, how hard would it be to outrun one of these crazy ass modern drones that hunts you down?
Yeah.
And then I asked myself, like, could I simulate that within the running app to give it some kind of, I don't know, to gamify it a bit? And turns out you can, figure out the speed of one of these drones, and you can mark your location and kind of predict how long it would take to get to you.
Yep.
And then it's just like click, like, oh, there's a reason for this app to maybe exist now. If you go download it, it doesn't even work anymore. It's a shit app. I just submitted it more as
experiment.
More as a protest to say, hey, this is happening, than anything else. And then it doesn't work now because I had to apply for a larger API, what's the word? More users allowed onto the platform. So you have to apply to Spotify to make your case. And I just said, hey, this is an app that, is against what you guys are doing. And I addressed it to Mr. Eck himself. And lo and behold, the app was denied. They weren't on board with the idea.
Surprise, surprise. That's incredible though. So I think is partially, the thing that impressed me about that is like you've drawn a parallel between you're currently working on something, you're playing around with it, it's just sitting there, and you wouldn't be able to get to the point without this technology. So you've used, I don't know what you use, Cursor or whatever, to build something.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's just sitting there. But then you've drawn parallel, you've seen this thing and you've connected the two. So is that creativity is something that you've always had, or did that your time at VML just really supercharge that?
Bingo.
Connecting this with that. Yeah.
Bingo. Yeah. I learned a few tricks from the folks there that put those decks together. It's about finding that cultural moment that people are, recognizing, and then seeing if there's a connection. And then that kind of gave it a narrative, which otherwise it would just be a shitty version of Strava.
Yeah. It's not something that people would latch onto in a viral way, right? There's no, as you say, narrative to it. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's super cool. I love that.
Thanks, man.
What about, okay, so OzFM. Let's just quickly touch. I want to touch on a couple of these and we'll just see where we go. But I could talk to you all day, it seems. OzFM, tell me about that and tell me creatively how you're using this technology to sort of grow this and build this and design this. Because I'm really interested to hear how you are using this technology from a design sense, not just a build sense.
Yeah, okay.
Even if you are, there's so many tools out there. I have this theory that, or not theory actually, I've tested it. I don't think they're very good at design, like really good design. But
that's what I wanted to ask.
Well, let's go there. Let's go there first. I've been using pretty much every tool that comes out. I was reasonably critical of Claude design. For a number of reasons, but it depends on what kind of design you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I like to think of myself as a product designer. I used to do branding a long time ago. I've done a whole bunch of different types of design, poster design for gigs way back when, album covers and stuff. But,
golden years.
I used to do, identity design and then, basic websites all the way through to, now apps. Which are more user flow based, and design in that sense is all about, thinking about complex user needs across a pathway, multiple pathways that a user could take and all the things that could go wrong and how much do you put in front of a user and how much do you take out to make it a really seamless experience, right? And then you have to take into consideration all of the guidelines from the app stores, like Apple and Google have all these Apple human interface guidelines, etc. And you really have to have a lot of experience in using these tools to know what works and what doesn't and know when to use a certain interaction and when not to.
Yep.
And so my experience with all of these tools has been that they're awful. I've not used a single.
Spot on.
We'll touch on it.
And there was one out there that was just amazing, but
well, I say that in the past, so I will touch on Fable. But by and large, they've been terrible. And any attempt to build some sort of system around them still hasn't been great. So the best results I've had was shifting from, just an infinite canvas where you're just blindly working with these tools and saying, design me this, design me that, to the thing that's worked is context. So I've shifted my workflow to be really heavy requirements first. So you spend, as you've said, a lot of time in text and you are elucidating ideas. You're getting the system to grill you on, what should this be? What shouldn't it be? And oftentimes you riff enough where you might change your idea, but it doesn't matter. You've just got to get through it. And once you have a really detailed set of requirements, you feed that into an agent as context and you say, right, this is all the functionality that it has. This is how it all needs to work. And part of that can be design. And I have used all these different tools like Impeccable. I've used a bunch of different, design skills. And anyway, I don't think they're very good. But what does work is at a basic level, sort of a standard set of primitives. So like you give it, a description of the style, it might be bubbly, fun, blah, blah, blah. You give it the colors, you give it the fonts, you might give it some reference images to draw from, but then you give it the requirements. That's when it starts to get a lot better. So using tools like Pencil, you can talk to your code base. So you basically tell your agent, look at this feature and create a flow that addresses all of the needs of the users in the PRDs. Right. And it does an okay job. It's not bad, not great. And there's still a lot of flow problems. That's inconsistent. I would change that. There's no offline state for that. Too much text and they way overcook it.
Yeah.
But I will say, and this was even before it got banned the first time around, Fable 5 was another eye-opening moment for me because it not only designed the flow in the way that I expected, it actually improved things. So it understood the requirements and it improved a particular flow on a product I was working on where I thought, that's actually really smart. It kind of was like, whoa, I'm dealing with something else here. And now it's just been turned back on, and I'm this poor thing. I'm abusing it, but it's getting there. Again, I wouldn't say it replaces senior thought, because you have to have everything in your head anyway. You need to understand what you're building. If you just hand this off and you go, you do it, you're going to get rubbish. So you have to collaborate, and that takes time. But I see a world where this technology gets very good, because you're seeing the progression. And I think as designers, we have to acknowledge that and say, okay, well, we can't be too elitist, right? Like, I saw this backlash for the OpenClaw app. I don't know if you follow OpenClaw. They're an open source. They're still an open source project. They weren't given hundreds of millions of dollars by OpenAI, so they're still just supported by maintainers. And they released a mobile app, and I mean, it wasn't very good. The design looked really sloppy, and they just, obviously it looked vibe coded basically. And designers on social platforms just raked it over the coals. Yeah. And I thought it was really sad, because, firstly, it's open source. So if you don't like it, design something better. But don't put yourselves in a position as a group, a culture, like as designers, where you have this elitist viewpoint. You should try to help people, because this technology is only going to get better, and there will come a point where that mid-tier of designer just gets wiped out. Well, unfortunately, I'm seeing this trajectory. But if you're using it to get to that higher tier where you're doing more of the thinking and you know what good is, you're going to be fine. And people are still too busy to do it themselves. So anyway, that was just a little bit of an aside. But I think that, Fable was great.
I haven't tried it myself yet, but I've seen like the stuff on social media, and it just, it's
good.
It's holy cow. Like, I can't believe it's gotten this far. But I'm always like a little skeptical, like some of the stuff you see shared, like, okay, how much of that really was made by Fable versus did you have to coach it along, etc.
Yeah, but I think you're right. As a deep user of it, I see all the posts where, it's some hype video, and most of it's nonsense, I'd say. Yeah. Okay. Don't have the time to reply to them all, but it is pretty impressive.
I've seen the examples and stuff where they say that they prompted to make like GTA 6 or something, and it's just like
it still takes a lot of work, as you're saying before. It's a different kind of work, but it's still a lot of work. There's still a lot of craft involved, which I like.
Yeah, totally.
But anyway, what about you with your approach to using it for design and OzFM?
I guess first of all, the design on OzFM is terrible, but it was just sort of a hobby project, just to see if I could pull it off. And the original idea started as actually back at VML. There was I can't remember the name of the band. One sec. Chiquitita. Not the Bee Gees. Damn it.
It's just gonna be stuck in your head.
Yeah. Now I can't. I'll never forget it.
It'll come to you if you keep talking.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's this project. They had this huge famous song, Chiquitita, and they, way back when in the 70s, ABBA, that's who it is, ABBA. Yeah, they had put it out in the 70s, and they gave the royalties away. And they gave it to UNICEF. A little bit of, love and
ABBA history.
And ABBA history. And UNICEF actually came to VML and said, hey, the biggest donation that we ever received from anyone was that song, because the royalties from that song, it came in the millions.
Wow.
And they were like, can we do something like that again? How could we strategically encourage more artists to do the same? Is there a Taylor Swift out there that has a, not a massive hit, but, a mediocre one that she could give away and help a lot of people in need? And so that was the brief. How could we encourage more artists to do the same? And I had been experimenting with seeing if I could get AI and voice AI to run a fictitious radio station, just for fun. And I'd connected it also to Spotify, and I just wanted to see if I could rebuild that sort of 70s California, beach radio vibe, and if I could get a DJ to come on and talk about, I don't know, relevant news topics, even introduce the next song, know the last one that was played, take live callers or chats or whatever. And so there was that idea, and I was like, oh, ABBA, maybe there's something here where we could promote artists that are giving away their music and stream it through that. And so they loved the idea. Cool. Let's do it. But then the war in Ukraine broke out, and UNICEF's focus kind of shifted a bit, blah, 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 blah. But then that idea, I was like, well, I'll still go and build it. and to still make a AI powered radio station for fun. And so it changed names a couple times, and it just kept working on it. And then I got to the point where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to release it and put it out there, and it's free and it runs off of SoundCloud, and you can play with it and turn DJs on, and yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so what is your process for building something like that? Is there any sort of tips you can share for viewers where you go from an idea to a product, as a designer?
Yeah.
How do you go about it? What do you actually do? Because it's a cool idea, and the output's funky too. Like, it's actually quite, you say it's not a good design. I disagree. I think it's fun. So, what's your approach to that sort of stuff?
So it's just start simple. This is going to sound so basic, but just start talking to AI about it. Even like, here's kind of the rough shape of the idea. Here are the features that I want it to have. It's very similar to what you were just describing and establishing that PRD. Here's the requirements, and you kind of start there. And although I don't think I was doing it back then quite like that, I hadn't quite evolved to even that level of thinking. Like, start with that plan document, and that becomes the the whole the Bible, the source of truth, the defining thing. It was a bit more like, can we make this feature? Can you make a connection to this platform connecting through this API? Here's the documentation for SoundCloud's API. Okay, cool. Now we have a connection. Next thing, how do I get a button on the screen that you can hit next, and it goes to the next thing? What is a good delivery mechanism for figuring out when a DJ should come on, and how does it know the context of what was last played? Just talking to it about everything, and and kind of following its suggestions, and then leaning on, I guess, my prior experience a little bit and saying, no, maybe we should do it this way.
But it's good because you have a level of sort of professional experience in these types of things anyway, right? So it's like you're brute forcing it, but you're brute forcing it with like a lot of knowledge already. So as you say, I've got it. I need this API,
little bit.
A little bit, yeah. For the average person, I speak to a lot of designers where they're not from this world. They're not built. And I keep making the point that designers need to be builders, not developers, but builders. Because you need to actually see the thing. You have to create the thing to see all the edge cases and stuff. And sometimes they get blank faces where they're like, well, I don't want to do that. I just like designing I'm not a developer. It's like, well, I'm trying to figure out ways to help people understand. It's quite straightforward. You just have to, as you say, you just talk to it. And
exactly.
I actually talk. I use Whisperflow and I just talk to my machine, and my wife thinks it's really weird. But if you saw some of my prompts, you think, oh God. If you don't know, it's the perfect technology to just feel stupid. You just talk through it. If you don't know something, you just go down these rabbit holes.
Totally.
And so has that been your progression in the last like 6 to 8 months or so? Constantly.
For sure. Like I think, I think it's just born out of that spirit of play and never trying to get too serious about it. And like you said, not being fearful of, saying something dumb to it. And I've just learned that you can just bring your natural language to it. And it's amazing at figuring out and inferring what you meant. And the more that you give it, the better. It's not like you need to define everything perfectly, or, you see like a lot of stuff on social media where people are trying to slog their perfect prompts that are like, it feels like they're trying to sell some system that's like, this is perfectly written and has all the definitions needed. Like, that's a thing. Like, there's a syntax or something to AI, and that's not the case.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
And then
there's no such thing as a perfect prompt.
Yeah. And it creates this perception that like, you've got to be, knowledgeable in all the prompting and prompt engineering. And even that, like, I get it. There's totally a role for prompt engineering, and there are some do's and don'ts, but it just makes it sound harder than it is.
Yeah. I think you're right. It's not as hard as people think it is. And on the prompt thing, it's like if you wanted an app and you hired an engineer and you basically just sat down with it for 2 minutes and said, right, I want an app that does this, and this, and it's got to do this, and this. And then you said, off you go. And they disappear for, I don't know, a month or 2 months. They come back and here's your app. And you go, oh, it's awful.
Yeah.
It's not what I wanted. You've missed. It's like, that's not how it works. You have to collaborate and work with, right? So I think you're right there.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a side question for you. I'm interested in your I'm interested in your approach to this, or what your thoughts are with this anti-AI sort of sentiment that I see within certain communities, especially with regards to creativity, and just what your thoughts are on it, because I certainly empathize with a lot of the detractors and the issues, but I also see that you can't turn the switch off, and I do think that some of the concerns are overblown, and I see it as a tool, more of an additive tool to be more creative. So, from you and I think are quite similar. So I was very interested to hear what your sort of thoughts are on that. Is it doom and gloom, and what would you say to the concept of this stuff, these companies sort of scraping everyone's data and spitting it back out, iterations of it?
I'd like to think that I'm generally a positive person, so I try to not go to the doom and gloom. It's definitely like always been a thought and in the back of my mind, like, what does it mean if this becomes easier? I've built my life around learning the skill. What does that mean? But I don't think it's doom and gloom. Like, if I look at my own just personal experience over the last couple of years with it, it's been absolutely positive. I hear the concerns, and there's a big part of me that totally resonates with the anti-AI movement. Don't get me wrong. Like, and I'm starting to ask myself, like, when is the right and wrong time to use it? For example, even on Oz FM, one of the very first iterations on it, I had cloned David Bowie's voice just out of fun, and then I sat with that for a while, and I was like, you know what? I don't think that's the right thing to do, and so I've shifted away from that. But there's also the environmental concerns and how much power we're consuming to produce stuff. Like, I think about some of my prompts that I let through, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but like, there are definitely some tasks that I could do that I'm giving off to AI at a micro level that, like, come on, man, like, I don't need to be doing that, but you just sort of do, and it becomes part of your thinking process. It's interesting you asked that, because that was actually one of the questions I wanted to bring up with you was, like, what have you been noticing, this sort of anti-AI sentiment?
Yeah, I really have. Thanks for sharing that, by the way. It's good to get your feedback. I'm definitely seeing there's people that just don't want to bar of it at all, and they'd like change careers.
Yeah,
they don't want to do it, and fair enough. You're free to do whatever you want. I think some of the energy sort of concerns are a little bit overblown. I have a different opinion on energy usage. I think that energy usage in itself is not bad, and that the quality of life goes up if a society is using more energy, which means that the focus should be on energy generation, clean energy generation, and efficient energy usage.
Yeah.
If you're going to say, oh, energy usage is bad, well, where do you stop? Where do you draw the line? Like, you want to go wear leaves and live in the forest? Well, I'm sorry. Energy consumption is a part of modern society. So it's where do you use it? How do you use it? The water usage, most people get that wrong in the sense that they think that these data centers just consume so much water, but it's a closed loop system, most of them. So once they get it once, they more or less, they don't use as much, right? And so you see these stories that just they get perpetuated in media. And I think that there's this anti-sentiment just comes in, and people just start to passively absorb, sort of read it and take it on board. So I think that's less of a concern for me. And I do think these things will be a lot more efficient, right? So the human brain uses I think it's like 20 watts or something consistently compared to the power usage of these models, right? So you think about what we're able to do with our little me computer compared to these tools, and you can see there's a lot of optimization, right? Where this is the worst it's ever going to be.
Yeah.
And we're already seeing that with like Chinese models. They're optimizing these things. They're getting them faster and faster and faster. So it'll get a lot better. It'll become more ingrained and less of a concern on that side of things. So that part I'm not too worried about.
Yep.
The creative, copywriting sort of concern, that's real.
Yeah. I
mean, these companies have just scraped the web basically with no attribution, and you just generate. It was when OpenAI had their image generation tool, and everyone said, "Make me a Studio Ghibli image of this."
Somehow OpenAI kind of endorsed that and pushed it.
It just took off. Yeah. And then they made it harder to do, right? And then the models get so nerfed because you can't do anything with it because it triggers all these safeguards.
Yep.
That there's a fine line there. So I don't have the solution to that. I don't like it. I think there needs to be a better attribution model, or some way that people, it's like it's like streaming, right? It'd be great if you streamed audio, that everyone that contributed that got, continuous streamed money.
Yeah.
But the system has to change. That's a different conversation. The entire system needs to change to support that sort of thing. So, yeah, that is a concern for me. And I try not to, and to your point where I really like what you said, where you said, I experimented with it, but I'm not going to steal David Bowie's voice. I felt bad.
Yeah.
And that's the right way to be. I think to make a conscious decision to say, you know what, I'm not going to do that. And I think that's the way that we should approach it until there is a better solution. But I don't think just shutting down and just not using it is.
Yeah, it's to use that phrase, just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Like when you think about the positives that's come from it, like I'm sure you can appreciate this. Like pre-AI, there was so much work that you did not communicate all of the depth of it to a client. That you were, you would slave over doing stuff, and that's not fair on the developers or the designers. Really, that's not like to sit in front of in my opinion, to sit in front of a computer screen day in and day out, building these digital tools. That's not a valuable use of human life, really.
Yeah.
And to have AI kind of step in and then take some of that stuff out, I think it's great for people and people's livelihoods that outside of work, like the amount of time that it sort of gives you back, I think is absolutely worth the stuff that we're going through to get it there.
I agree with that. Some people derive great pleasure in if you're talking about development, right? They're actually writing the code, and they've spent their whole career doing that, and that's what they want to do. And that's a really challenging position to be in because that role is dramatically changing. They now have to become orchestrators. They have to understand a system to know where the risk is in the system to make sure the agent doesn't screw it up because the economics don't work anymore, A client's not going to pay you the rate of the old way. It just doesn't make any sense anymore. So what can you do with the time you get back? And that for me is the really exciting part. And I think it's about being more creative and starting podcasts and
doing the things that you always wanted to do. Really?
Yeah. We've got more time. So I've got agents writing PRDs right now.
I saw the coolest job title on that note about engineers the other day, and this guy had it on his LinkedIn, and he put vibe coder auditor. So like vibe coded apps auditor. Oh. And I was like, that's it.
He's got plenty of work.
Yeah. You always want that person, looking over your shoulder that's got the experience that can say, oh, I don't know about that one.
Yep. Let me help. OpenClaw could have used that. So is there anything else you wanted to convey? Anything you wanted to share before we finish up?
I mean, not really. Just don't be afraid of it. Experiment, play, and see where you get. Some of those ideas that you've always had in the back of your head that you never thought would see the light of the day, give them a shot. Yep. And you might be surprised.
Yep. All right. Well, great. Look, I'll tell you what, it's been an awesome conversation. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. We should catch up outside of this.
Absolutely.
It's been really good. I could talk for hours.
Yeah, same, man. All right. Cool. And enjoy your weekend.
Thanks too. You too. Yeah. All right. See ya.